An iPhone? Raise your hand. Hold your iPhone up if you have an iPhone, Apple product. Okay, just look around. Okay, yes. Okay, more than 50% have Apple products. Anyone in here just swear by Apple? Just go, Apple's the way to go. Okay, Jonathan got it. All right. Well, going back to the history of Apple, when Steve Jobs, the founder, was building his company that started in his parents' garage, he called the CEO of Pepsi Cola. His name was John Sculley. This is only 4 years into the start of Apple. And he asked him to become the CEO of Apple Corporation. Now, it wasn't $2.6 trillion company like it is now. That's how much it's worth, this year. $2.6 trillion. It's just a little startup. This guy had the guts to go and contact the president of Pepsi Cola and say, hey, we got a pretty cool company. I want you to lead my company. Leave Pepsi. Take over Apple. Take a look at this clip, because this is a clip of the Pepsi Cola CEO about his interaction with this young man named Steve Jobs.
While Jobs pursued his Mac mission, he needed a more orthodox chief executive to run the company, a respectable face who could sell to corporate America. He chose Pepsi Cola executive John Sculley. Sculley refused. Leave Pepsi for a 4-year-old company that had been set up in a garage? Are you serious? But it was hard saying no to Steve Jobs.
And then he looked up at me and just stared at me, with the stare that only Steve Jobs has. And he said, you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world? And I just gulped, because I knew I would wonder for the rest of my life, what I would miss.
Yeah.
Do you want to sell sugar water the rest of your life, or do you want to change the world? What an amazing pitch. Jobs did change the world with his vision. However, the call was dramatic that he made to this guy. The climb was filled with ups and downs, and the cost was more than most people would accept. But Jesus calls us to change the world and make a difference on a greater scale. But so few respond to that call or are able to stay with him over the course of their lifetime. Why is that? Well, in a greater way than Steve Jobs, his challenges are so intense. His demands are so intense. His following him is filled with uncertainty. And just when we think we've got Jesus all figured out and we can rest, he throws new challenges into our lives. We're going to take a look today in Matthew chapter 8, because we're going through a series on the book of Matthew. And if you're just stepping in today, it's great to have you here. We're going to take a look at a sequence of events in the ministry of Jesus. Jesus is called to follow him and get in a boat with him. Then it moves on to another snippet of life in the boat with Jesus. And then we're going to get out of the boat with Jesus. So we're on the shore, going to get in a boat. We're going to ride in the boat with Jesus, and we're going to get out of the boat today. And it's going to be a little bit stormy, so you better buckle up your seatbelt. First of all, getting in the boat, where Jesus' authority over man is clear. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." Jesus leaves the crowd behind him, but 2 men want to go in the boat with him. They want to go with him. They want to follow him. And they're both called disciples in this section. The first man's a scribe, and he wants to follow Jesus wherever he happens to be going. His words, though, are stronger than his commitment. He's like, "Hey, I'll go with you wherever you go." He doesn't really understand what he's getting himself into. following Jesus. And Jesus informs him that he's essentially homeless. He says, listen, even animals have nests, but he refers to himself in the third person as the Son of Man. He says, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight. He's warning him about the insecurity of having no set home or form of support. We don't find out whether the man follows him or not. That's what's interesting about this story. We don't see his response. It doesn't seem like it, because his response is left out of the story. So this guy comes up to him, like, man, I'm going to go with you wherever you want. And Jesus says, great. I don't have a place to stay. I can't offer you any security. Then we don't hear another word from that guy. Now the second man calls him Lord and tells him he wants to go bury his father first. Now this seems like a reasonable request, doesn't it? Jewish tradition called a man to forego all other spiritual activity. Everything that could be considered spiritual, going to the temple, praying, all of that was just scuttled in an effort to bury your family. But the story makes you wonder, if the man's father really was dead, why is he talking to Jesus about going somewhere? What's he doing talking to Jesus? Shouldn't he be there with his dad, taking care of his family during that grieving period? At least one commentator states that what the man is really saying is, hey, I'll follow you after my father dies. Once he's dead, then I'm going to really follow you. He wanted to follow Jesus, but he just didn't want to do it right that second. Jesus' response, though, that's what's so powerful about this. It's so abrupt. I know if you're a disciple, and many of you are disciples, you've read this so many times. I want you to just ask God to see this in a fresh light. But Jesus' response is so apparently insensitive, harsh, borderline offensive. I want you to imagine, someone going up to, let's pick on Glenn Hoger. I really like picking on him. And they say, hey, Glenn, I really want to go to your small group this Friday, but my dad just died. And he said, listen, bro, you better be there Friday. You let the dead bury their own dead. I want to see you there on Friday, and you need to bring snacks this Friday. Now, would that be cool over there, everybody? Like, good answer, Glenn. Spiritual choice. We'd be like, come on, dude, have a heart. Where's the love? He's not being very Christ-like. But in this passage, is Jesus being very Christ-like? I don't think so. He just says, listen, let the dead bury their own dead. You come with me. Harsh. He's demanding that the man place his devotion to God above that of his physical family. Now, this exchange would be the source of so many social media firestorms, wouldn't it? If this happened today, and Jesus just said that, it's hard to imagine. You can just see this interchange. You can see it videoed, a little close. Here's Jesus. Hey, dude, let the dead bury their own dead. Just all over. It's hard to imagine this. Jesus comes across so strong here, only the passage of time has dulled the impact of his words because we've heard it so many times. Both of these small case studies with these disciples, these wannabe disciples, point out the difference between being in the crowd and actually climbing into the boat with Jesus and following him. Lots of people crowd around Jesus, amazed at his teaching, but few are willing to follow him seriously. And Jesus is revealing what's very common to those who make massive differences in our world and history. Great men and women and their demands on men and society are so outlandish, so strong, so uncompromising, that they can often be interpreted as harsh, unrealistic, offensive, and at the very least, insensitive. I want you to think about these people. Okay, who's on the upper left there? Elon Musk, okay, head of Tesla, SpaceX, about 3 other companies. How about the lower left? Bill Gates, right? What's he the president of? I don't know if he's president anymore, but founder of Microsoft. How about the guy on the right? Steve Jobs, okay, he had cancer later in life. Each one of these guys has built billion-dollar, even trillion-dollar corporations. They've also created an army of haters for their willingness to demand intense sacrifice of their employees. There are people here who have applied to jobs that won't apply to those companies. You know why? Because they can be jerks. Because their demands on employees are so intense. If you've ever read a biography, and I've read a couple on Elon Musk, if you've read a biography or two of these guys, you're left with kind of a dual impression. One, it's amazing how gifted they are. Genius level. Just the vision, the foresight, the kind of like reality-defying view of the world. That anything can change. That the world can be a totally different place. And at the same time, that these guys are jerks. They don't care about what people think. And they are just like willing to step on people's toes, fire people right and left, and just keep on trucking and not even feel bad about it. You know what I'm saying? Not like, oh, I'm so sorry, bro, that I had to fire you. They're like, he's gone. Let's move on. They just, it doesn't register on the emotional scale. Now, let's talk about following Jesus, because some of you might be interested in following Jesus. And you're thinking, he's just so loving. Golly gee willikers. He gives hugs. He's so kind. He understands me. He gets me. And we just think, oh, it's going to be just such a smooth ride. Not so much. That's not the Jesus of the Bible. Yes, he's loving. Yes, he's kind. At the same time, he will demand everything from you. Your very life. And sometimes as disciples, we became a disciple maybe 20 years ago. And we're like, yes, I got to be totally fired up. But then what we want to do is we want to lower Jesus' standard and make him so much more palatable to the world. He's not like those guys. Yes, he's got vision. But he's so nice and friendly. Yeah, heck yeah, you can just live your life the way you've been living it and still follow Jesus. It's okay. No. Jesus' expectations are still as strong as the day he spoke to those people on the beach. He's going to demand more out of you than you might be willing to give at this point. And many of us in here have been studying the Bible, you've been studying the gospel, you've been interested, you're like, hey, I want to get together, I want to learn more. And either you've just put the brakes on it, or you're not even here today. And you know the reason? Because Jesus' expectations of you are so dramatic, so radical. He's saying, listen, you're going to have to change your job schedule. You're going to have to leave your current set of friends because they're calling you back into the world. You may have to break up a relationship that's keeping you away from God. You're going to have to get rid of that pet sin that you've been devoted to for the past 5 years. You're going to have to leave your comfortable present lifestyle. You're going to have to get out of yourself. You're going to have to actually talk to people about Jesus. You're going to have to do things that you feel uncomfortable doing. And Jesus is going to call you to it, and he's not even going to bat an eye. He's not going to go, would you mind? Please, just think about it. Just please, really want you to follow. Come on, it's okay. That's not the way Jesus works. He says, listen, follow me. Some of us are like, I want to do it, but I'm not ready yet. Just like the second guy. Hey, after everything's taken care of, after my priorities are settled, I'm going to get to it. You watch me. I'm going to go. I'm excited. But I'll do it in the fall. It's too hot right now. I'm going away for the summer. I got to stop going. I'm going to Yosemite. How can I do it? Listen, that's exactly what these people are wrestling with. It's not clear that those guys ever got on the boat. We never hear from them again. And disciple, I want to talk to you because so often you're getting discouraged because people walk away from Jesus. You're trying to tone him down. You're trying to put a collar on the Lord of this creation and say, well, Jesus, I know he's tough. We'll make it a little easier for you. That's not the Jesus of the Bible. I hope you decide to follow him. If you've been studying the Bible, if you're thinking about him, but there's a massive difference between watching The Chosen on TV and being chosen by Jesus. It's easy to watch him on TV and go, I love that guy. That's my Jesus. But when he calls you, it's a totally different situation. You're the one who's going to have to get into that boat. Many are invited, but few are chosen. And I hope you make it. I really pray for people. You know, people fill out those prayer cards. I pray for them. And then I see people coming for a while, and then I see them drop out. And I just go, I know why. It's Jesus' commands are tough. He's really tough. But he's the Lord of the creation. Okay, so now we step into the boat. Life in the boat. We've been on the coast. Now we're getting into the boat. Jesus' power over the natural world. Then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we're going to drown. He replied, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. Now, this story works on two different levels, okay? There's multiple levels in the Bible, but this really is clearly two different levels. First of all, it highlights Jesus' power over the natural world, doesn't it? I mean, he just calms a storm, boom. But it also describes life in the church with Jesus. It's like a little mini church. They're on a field trip. So you got at least 12 guys crammed in there, and then you got Jesus taking a nap. That's a picture of the church. So let's talk about life in the church boat. Okay, this is like a little mid-sized cruiser right here we've got here. This is a little bit bigger boat that we've got. Maybe 40, 50-foot boat. Okay, this story pictures life as a disciple. Now notice in the first verse here, Jesus is the first one in the boat, and then the disciples follow him. Jesus always leads the way. He's always going where you may not want to go. But if you're a disciple, you got to follow him into the boat. The others have been weeded out. They've been left on the shore. They're sad. They're bummed out. They may be mad at Jesus' response, but they're not in the boat. And they found a boat in the mud in Galilee in 1986. What an amazing discovery. This is a boat discovered in 1986, and they dated it to the time around when Jesus was preaching the gospel. It's like 2,000 years old. Isn't that cool? And so it's a tiny, look how low, what do you call it, the draft of the boat is? I mean, this is the kind of boat that 12 guys plus Jesus all squeezed into when the storm hit. That'd be scary. Okay, it's a storm hits. It was about 24 feet long, and it could hold maybe, they said, about 13 people. Now, I want you to imagine the disciples. Jesus weeds out a couple wannabe disciples. But they get in the boat. They're like, all right, see you later, dude. Hopefully you'll change your mind. I'm getting on the boat with Jesus. All right, I'm stepping in. Woo, this is going to be fun. It's going to be an adventure. Yes! And then the storm hits. They go from being the few and the proud to the few and the petrified. These guys show both a little faith and then a lack of faith at the same time, just like us. They have some faith, but then they lack faith. They have the faith to seek help from the right person in the boat. Now, these guys are all experienced seamen, right? They've grown up on the shore. They're fishermen. They're used to storms. They're used to things like this. But this storm is so scary, they're freaked out. So who do they talk to? The only guy that wasn't raised around boats. Jesus. He lived in Nazareth, grew up in Nazareth, about a day's walk from the shore. This guy was not a fisherman. But they're like, dude, come on, help us out here. So they had faith that Jesus could change it. So they realize they need help from God. And on the other hand, they haven't come to the faith that says, if God is in the boat, we can't go down. They don't have that level of faith. They haven't pieced it together like, okay, think about it this way. Have you ever watched a show like an action show or a thriller or something like that, and you love the star of the show? Maybe it's a Marvel show. There's a big, about halfway through, and the star of the show has a gun to his head, looks like he's going to die, and then they cut the scene, they go to a commercial. And then do you think, oh, the movie's over. He's going to die. No, you go, they can't kill him. Then the show would be over. We still got 45 minutes left in the show. He can't be dead yet. And then they come back. It's like, boom, he works his magic, comes back to life. That's what these disciples should have pieced together. If this really is the Son of God and we're in a storm, we can't die yet. He's not going to die. He's going to somehow pull us through this. Are you really worried if Jesus is in your boat that he's going to die? No way. In the same way, these disciples should have realized if God's in the boat, we cannot go down today. But as disciples, we're going to face sudden storms in our lives with regularity. In this little boat we're living in here together. Breakups, financial setbacks, children issues, struggles in church splits, friends leaving, heartbreaks. All these things are going to happen in your church life. Sometimes we go, oh my gosh, the church is just falling apart. It's going to go down today. Or my family, oh my gosh, well, my marriage is just falling apart. Listen, if you're a disciple, Jesus is in your boat. And some of you are facing some really intense things. I don't want to belittle them. They're intense. But you got to keep in mind, who's in my boat? If Jesus really is the Lord of my life and of my church, we're not going down. You're going to get wet. You're going to get soaked. You might get freaked out, but you're not going down. And if you're like, oh my gosh, the church is just going to, oh Lord, oh my Lord. Hang on there, tiger. Jesus is doing fine. Actually, he's sleeping right now. Quiet. It's when we need to slow down, take a deep breath, and ask ourselves, if Jesus really is in my boat, am I going to go? Am I going to go right now? I don't think so. Jesus is sleeping, but I imagine that he's got like one eye open on you. He's just like, wonder how he's going to respond to this situation. How are you going to respond to the storm that you're facing in your life? Okay, so the second thing about this little incident, about this story, I know this is really small. You can look at your own Bible. That's too small to read. This section focuses on Jesus' power over the natural world. Matthew probably had in mind, when he's relating this occurrence, Psalm 107. Let's read this. Let me read this to you. Take a look at how similar it is to the story that we just read about. Psalm 107, verse 23 says, "Some went out on the sea in ships. They were merchants on the mighty waters. They saw the works of the Lord, his wonderful deeds in the deep. For he spoke and stirred up a tempest that lifted high the waves. They mounted up to heavens and went down to the depths. In their peril, their courage melted away." Does that sound familiar? "They reeled and staggered like drunkards. They were at their wits' end. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. They were glad when it grew calm, and he guided them to their desired haven. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. Let them exalt him in the assembly of the people and praise him in the council of the elders. We've talked about this from the first chapter, but the writer Matthew is interested in the word fulfillment. Fulfillment. We're meant to see the events in Jesus' life as a fulfillment of Old Testament passages. To build your faith in God's word, in his plan, and in his story. And to believe this is Jesus. He's the one predicted in God's word. Jesus was sleeping, and these experienced fishermen were freaking out. They were just losing it. Like the water's just coming in, they're bailing it out at the same time. The nature of the lake is such that it gets sudden freak storms because it's actually below sea level. And it's in the Great Rift Valley that comes all the way up from Kenya, and it goes up through Africa and straight into the Promised Land. So when Jesus wakes up, what's his first thing that he does? Does he calm the storm? No, in this story here it says he rebukes them for their lack of faith. So I want you to imagine the situation. Jesus, wake up! He wakes up, he's like, where's your faith? I mean, they're thinking we're going to die. Wrong focus, Jesus. Help us out here. Save us. What's he focuses? He's like, come on, dudes. Why are you so afraid? Where's your faith? He focuses on the spiritual. Why? Because he knows he's got the natural world under his control. He's like, okay, boom, let's stop the wind. He's completely composed. What this is meant to point to you and me is the fact that Jesus is God. He's in control of your life, of the natural world, and we're meant to ask ourselves, what kind of man is this? Is Jesus really in my life? You know, I heard this last Wednesday that the men met together, and Kevin, who I put in charge, did a great job organizing a men's event. I should leave town more often, because what I heard it was a real high point. And what was inspiring is that the guys who were there, like 5 of them, got and shared about how Jesus had changed their life through the midst of storms. Things that had happened in their lives and how they'd witnessed Jesus calming the storm. How he changed their lives, how he'd done miracles. That's the Jesus of the Bible. Okay, third section from this Matthew chapter 8, getting out of the boat. So we've been on the shore, we've stepped into the boat, we've ridden a little bit in Jesus' boat, now we're getting out of the boat. Jesus' authority over the supernatural world. When he arrived at the other side in the region of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Some distance from them, a huge herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs. He said to them, go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town and reported all this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they said, please save us. We need to become Christians. We want to follow you. Wait a second. And when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. Just when the disciples think that they're safe on land. Okay, they're just like, woo, we made it. They come into the shore like, yes, we made it. It's awesome. After nearly drowning in a massive storm, they step out of the boat only to be charged by 2 demon-possessed, violent men. So they just get out of the boat and this guy's going after him. They're like, oh my gosh, let's get back in the boat. These men are animated by demons, and the demons speak for the men. They're aware that their time of judgment is coming. This is a showdown between 2 spiritual forces. Again, the writer Matthew is like masterful. In the first section, he talks about how his demands on people, how he sets the terms of our discipleship. In the second section, he talks about his control over the storm, the natural world. This time, he's the master over the supernatural world, demons, things we can't see. And so these 2 men come charging him. What's Jesus doing? Is he afraid? No. He just stands there. Now, if you were a disciple and two guys were just charging you, wouldn't you be freaked out a little bit? I would be. All Jesus says is go. That's the only thing he says in this passage. And the demons switch from inhabiting the men to a herd of pigs. Apparently, demons don't like being homeless. In Matthew chapter 12, in verse 43, Jesus says, when an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places seeking rest and doesn't find it. Then it says, I'll return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean, and put in order. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there. And the final condition of that person is worse than the first. That's how it will be with this wicked generation. Okay, I don't want to develop that passage, but I think it's really interesting. These demons love to inhabit people. They don't like to be homeless. And they're like, hey, if you're going to kick us out, Jesus, send us into the pigs. And he says, go. He sends them there. They rush down the bank. They die in the water. When the townspeople are told what's happened, their response is to get Jesus to leave. They aren't Jewish. These people are not Jewish. They have no interest in the work of a holy man coming into their area. All through the ages, people have preferred their pigs over Jesus. We have to ask ourselves whether Jesus is attractive to us or simply an obstacle to our financial goals. Some of you have been coming to church and you're like, yeah, I'm kind of interested a little bit in Jesus, but he's kind of a headache. There's a lot of demands he places. I don't think I want that. I'm just going to leave. I want him out of my life. That's where most people place Jesus. Like, no, you're an obstacle. You're a bother. I don't want you in my life. And they don't allow him to enter into their life. Now, this account focuses almost exclusively on the power of Jesus, not the response of the demon-possessed men. In other passages, in Mark and in Luke, it's a lot more focused on the guys. They're cutting themselves. There's a guy who's screaming, how he gets helped, how he gets converted. He's in his right mind, and then he goes and preaches to 10 cities. None of that is in this section of Matthew. Why? Because Matthew's primary mission is to point to Jesus as the Messiah, filled with power over supernatural forces. Now, another thing you may be wondering, it's not clear why there are 2 demon-possessed men in Matthew's account when there's only 1 in Mark and Luke. Now, there's a lot of discussion about that. Some say that Mark and Luke simply concentrate on the primary character, that there were 2, but he just mentions 1 who's doing most of the speaking. We don't know. We don't understand. We don't know why that happens. Okay, I'm going to come to a landing here real soon. We're coming to the conclusion. Life around Jesus is exciting. It's adventurous. It's scary. How many people want to live an exciting and fun life? Anybody? Who wants to make this life count? Like, yeah, I want to live life to the full. I want to just really max it out. Just drink it to the dregs. Anybody in here? Okay, so you're that type of a person. Some of you are like, nope, not me at all. If you want to live that life, your best choice is to follow Jesus, because you are going to get a handful of excitement in your life. When you follow him, you'll start with no promise of security, only companionship with other people who follow him and with Jesus. Your life will be like crossing a stormy lake in a tiny boat with low rails and crammed in with a bunch of smelly people. And all during that time, when you're freaking out, it's going to seem like Jesus is asleep. And you're going to be like, come on, dude, wake up! And just when you reach your max freak out level, you know that point where you're just like, I'm freaking out! Jesus wakes up, gives you a quick rebuke for freaking out so much. He's just like, what is your problem? Where's your faith? And then he settles the wave. He solves your problem. Some of you come through some massive storms. And when you look back, you go, I should have had more faith. I wish I had had more faith back then. When you think you're ready for a nice quiet break, after Jesus calms the storm, guess what happens? You'll get attacked by crazy people. And Jesus will have to deal with that situation as well. And he shows through all of this his authority over people, his extreme demands on his disciples, his power of the elements, and his fearless control over supernatural spiritual forces. Nothing phases Jesus. If you want to follow him, you just need to know it's not going to be a smooth ride. It's not going to be smooth getting in the boat, sailing in the boat, or getting out of the boat. Now, I want to just leave you with some next steps. First of all, step into the boat. Okay, I want to talk to you, those who are studying the Bible, seeking the gospel, wanting to learn more about Jesus. I want to beg you to get serious about getting right with Jesus. Many of you have been coming for 3-4 months. You're kind of in the same spot. You're frozen on the shore. And you're like, I don't know. Oh, I'm not sure if I want to get in that boat or not. Make a decision. Please. Come talk to me. Or if you're a woman, go talk to my wife. Or go talk to the person who brought you. I'd be so happy to sit down with anybody and study the Bible to help you to build a relationship with Jesus or help you to work through your obstacle. The people who brought you would be as well. But you need to make a decision to get right with God, to be in a following relationship with Jesus. Not a spectator, not watching it on TV, but actually living it in your life. Is it going to be tough? Oh, you bet. But it'll be worth it. Secondly, follow Jesus everywhere. To the disciples already, in May, I just went to this conference. There's going to be like an all-world group activity where we're going to be reaching out as a family of churches all around the world. We're going to go take a look at this video. What I'd like you to do is download the All Nations app, and he's going to explain it in this following video.
Welcome to the ICOC, a family of believing Christians in 147 countries. We have more than 100,000 members, and we believe that together we're bigger than our local small group, our local church, even our national churches. We're a unified family around the globe.
We are the ICOC Global Missions Service Team. Our purpose is to educate and motivate our churches as we work towards Jesus' vision of making disciples of all nations. As a team, we are striving to clarify our progress as a movement, celebrating what God has done through us and recognizing needed areas of growth.
We also want to cast a vision for global missions, highlighting the work still to be done and opportunities to partner with God in building His church.
Our team is composed of representatives from each mission society in the ICOC. We are working with each mission society on clarifying our vision, improving our strategy, upgrading our communication, and implementing best practices for raising and managing funds. We hope to keep our global fellowship connected to the mission and to one another through the All Nations app, which we released in 2022 as a global resource for missions.
As a fellowship, we're living in complex and difficult times. We've recently endured a global pandemic, widespread racial tensions, and wars in Ukraine, Gaza. These are devastating challenges. They can make us feel isolated and alone. Thankfully, God gave thousands of disciples an opportunity to have a family reunion in Orlando, the Vision Conference in 2022. That said, the world needs the gospel that much more. We're ready to make a difference in seeking to save a lost world. Most of us desire to see more and be more in our walk in partnership with God. It is that unified desire that has inspired the unified global adventure called Eyes That See.
In 2 Chronicles 16:9, the scripture says, "The eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him." For the month of May, this will be our theme, Eyes That See. This month of missions is coming from around the world right to your phone But make sure you download the All Nations app so you don't miss the opportunity to be inspired.
Once you have the All Nations app, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Number one, complete. Each day you'll get a notification that your 90-second video has arrived. Just watch it and say a prayer for your brothers and sisters in that part of the world. Number two, see. Take a minute that day to share the good news with someone, anyone God puts in your path. And number three, need. Take time throughout the month to consider if there's anything you could do to meet the needs of others less fortunate than ourselves.
We invite you, everyone in your church, to join together on a month of missions where we will plead, seed, and meet the need. It's been a long time since we have done something together as a global family, a global fellowship. So let's download the app and tell our friends and get ready to be inspired by all that the Lord is doing around the world.
We pray that hearts are changed and that faith is built. Every 2 seconds, someone leaves this world behind. We know the truth and have the responsibility to change lives forever. Join us in May for this global missional event.
So I'd like to ask you, there's a QR code that you can download the app right there. And I'd like to ask us to, as a church, to really get in step with what's happening around the world, to get news from what's happening around the world, to be able to pray and to follow and to help serve and support missions around the world. So just hit that. There we go. Bingo. Thank you so much. Mike's going to come up right now.